Well, what have we here? Apparently, this is from visme.co, and once again, there's no gender wage gap. Actually, I'm sorry, there is. It favors women. Now, see what happens when it comes to the idea of the gender wage gap. It's actually a gender earnings gap. Because when it comes to individual wages, there's actually only a minor disparity, and in some instances, it actually favors women. But the challenge here is that from job to job, it's very different. So when you control for all factors, you'll find that in many ways women actually make more money in hourly wages. But it's complicated. And what I would always say is when it comes to the issue of the wage gap, I'm not going to pretend that one side has it better than the other. Certainly there's an issue of women not reaching the higher levels of certain industries. There may be biological reasons for that, maybe social reasons for that. There may be career reasons for that. It could be discrimination. At the same time, men work more dangerous jobs. So it's very, very complicated. The point is, the narrative being delivered by the mainstream, media, whatever you want to call it, is just not true. And we've got some charts here. It's really fascinating. So this is from Federico Enzo. Is the difference in work hours the real reason for the gender wage gap with an interactive demographic? Every year, the Department of Labor issues a report on the pay gap between men and women. Women earn a median of $30,000 per year, while men earn $40,000. In other words, working women earn 75% of what men earn. But this gap doesn't take into account the fact that on average, men work more hours than women. According to U.S. Census data, men spend an average of 41 hours per week at their jobs, while women work an average of 36.3 hours per week. Many argue that gender discrimination explains a large part of the difference in earnings. Maybe one instance, maybe a small instance, a small difference. Others argue that parenthood and gender roles usually affect women's earnings more than men. And that's also a fact. Fact. Plain and simple. Let's clap. Fact. The issue is women have babies, men don't. That means no matter what happens, no matter how small the amount of time the woman has to take off work, if a woman wants to have kids, she has to take off time at work. Plain and simple. If a man and a woman have the exact same build, and exact same intelligence, exact same job, and they both decide to have a family, the man doesn't have to take off work. I'm not saying he should. I'm not saying he shouldn't. Maybe the man should take off work to support his family, and there should be paternal and maternal leave. The issue is just that the man isn't going to birth the child. He doesn't have to go to a hospital, okay? But I will point out he should, okay? Like, you should definitely be there when your child is being born. The point I'm making is that fact, the man doesn't have to be there, means there's going to be single women who choose to have families, who choose to have babies. Men who don't. And there's going to be a disparity. It may not be married men and married women who face the disparity. It could be single men and single women making the disparity happen. To better understand the pay gap, we classified the respondents according to their marital and parenthood status. The gap is dramatically higher between married couples versus singles without children. For married parents, the gap is even greater. And this may be traditional roles, like the woman is more willing to stay home and the man is more willing to work. I don't know the answers. I just know it exists, right? So nominal wage and sex by group, weighted medians. So we can see that single with no children, men still earn a little bit more. Married, no children, men earn way more. Married with children, men earn way, way more. The biggest gap is married with children. So men are making probably, it's like I said, the women are probably saying, you know what, I'm going to take time off, have my kids. And I think that's totally respectable. I do. But let's not act like there aren't, it's all sexism. Hourly wage by sex and group, weighted medians. Look at this. Single and with no children, men make 10 cents more per hour. Wow. Married with no children, men make a bit more, about $6. And married with children, men are making close to about, six or so dollars. So it's relatively similar married whether or not. They say, but we also found that married fathers work even more than other men, while married mothers work less than married women. Wait. Married mothers work, okay, I see. Married mothers work less than women who are married without kids. We analyzed the pay gap across hundreds of U.S. occupations. According to our research, in most occupations, the main source of the pay gap lies in the difference between the number of hours spent at work by men and women. And marital status and parenthood explain almost all this difference in working times. The different behavior of women and men has an impact on the gender wage gap. As we will see below, the decision of who does the most work outside versus who stays at the home influences the pay gap in two ways. It modifies the nominal income, but it also influences how much women and men earn per each hour worked. Can I just point out, for the longest time, the men have been, adventuring off and going on the hunts while the women look after the kids. Those are the traditional roles, and it's very likely they still exist. So even if feminist women have rectified the problem in their community, So long as conservatives exist, the wage gap will never go away. You see why this is a problem, okay? In cities, you will pass laws. We have I think 3 laws now making it illegal to pay women less. They'll then, you look at a city and you might find, I believe in Atlanta, women are earning more than men on average. But when they do a nation level statistic, they say women are still earning less. That's not fair. Not realizing it's because there are conservative women who choose to be in the family, to be in the home with their family. And thus, this will always be weaponized by the left to demand more. Feminists can say, see, we haven't fixed the problem, not realizing they're pointing at conservatives who disagree with them, but they can use that data to push their ideology. So we have this as accountants and auditors' salary. Married with children, men earn 90, women earn 55. Married with no children, men earn 77, women earn 52. And single with no children, men earn about 5,000 more. It's about 10%. A few specific examples. Let's take a look at the most common occupation in the US, managers. This occupation is representative of the overall trend we see in the United States. Once again, the numbers are all basically very similar, but the single no children gap closes quite a bit. Single male, let's move on from this because they keep hitting the exact same point. They do point out, however, this is the important issue. Working hours. In all circumstances, yes, men earn a little bit more, but they also work longer. Men are earning more money, they work about an hour and a half longer. Married with no children, men are working about 3 or 4 hours longer, and married with children, it's about 5. So that doesn't make up for the entire disparity in the wage. So if a man is making 10% more, you'd expect him to work 10% more hours, right? Wrong, because hours accumulate, they turn into experience. Think about it this way. Let's say every hour you work, you earn 1 experience point. Every 100 experience points, you level up. Every level up, you make another $1 per hour. The point is, the more hours a man works, the more he can ask for raises, the more experience he generates, the better at his job he'll become. And this creates a disparity beyond, it's an exponential growth. So let's move down. So exceptions to the overall trend. This is interesting. We have seen that for the most common occupations, there is almost no absolute pay gap for singles without kids. And this gap could be explained by the difference in time spent at work. But there are some occupations that do show a gap for this group of people. Notable examples are drivers, retail salespersons, supervisors, and janitors. Interestingly, we can see the same general pattern in these occupations. The uncontrolled gap increases dramatically for married couples, even if they do not have kids. This is actually really interesting, these jobs where there is a wage gap. And once again, more data that will always exist to prove that there's a problem that can never be solved. It is a fact that there are certain jobs a man can do that a woman can't, and thus they'll be paid probably differently. And there's nothing you can do about it, okay? So let me ask you this question. First, do you think women should be allowed to be firefighters? The appropriate response, in my opinion, is 100% yes. However, anyone, no matter who you are, should have to pass an exam to become a firefighter, which includes a physical portion. This is what's going to happen. Some men will be too weak and unable to complete the physical exam. We're talking about firefighting, okay? You need to be able to drag a body out of a burning building to save lives, and if we're going to focus on saving lives, we should probably get the best for the job. Many women will likely not be strong enough for a few reasons. For one, women have less muscle mass, less bone density, tend to be shorter. Because men are bigger, they're going to be heavier, so the proportional strength needs to be much higher. Not only that, the proportion of women who are just going to be generally as strong or stronger than men, it's relatively low. Thus, if you put 10 men and 10 women up on the same exam, you got to carry this body out of a burning building, more women will fail than men, and thus you will end up with 80% men and 20% women. Then you will find that in this job, men are more likely to get hired. Not sexism. It's just a fact of biology. This isn't true for everything. There's definitely, and look, what I'm saying is, there is sexism, of course there is. It's just to what degree. Most of the gender wage gap can be explained by guys just working more hours. And we can see that across the board. And there's one where it's really, really interesting that I want to point out. So, weighted average of working hours per week. Single men and single women without kids. You can see that men are working more hours per week. It would then make sense that not only are they making more money, but as they become more experienced and spend more time on the job, they're more likely to be able to make more money by claiming they want raises. Hey, I'm here all the time. I deserve this. So you can see this is the married men and women without kids. Married parents. The men work way more hours. Okay? Now here's the best part. Hourly wage per age, singles without kids. Interestingly, beyond 40, women start to make more per hour than men do. Interesting, isn't it? And it's rather comparable for the most part in terms of hourly wage. And then if you're married without kids, men still earn more. Maybe this is, it's explained, as they say in this report, by men work more hours, and that's what we saw. And married parents, men make way more. And I think you can see here the exponential gain in experience. As the man works more hours, his cap for hourly wage goes way higher. So it's an exponential gain. Anyway, let's just, we'll wrap up with what they say. Gender discrimination occurs if a woman is paid less than a man for doing the same job. If we consider that the quantity of hours devoted to a job determines whether we consider a job to be the same as another, the data doesn't support the idea of gender discrimination at the aggregate level. To conclude and to recap, we can say that according to our analysis, job market forces and gender preferences in relation to marital status and parenthood could explain almost all of the pay gap. Most of the gap is not the result of gender discrimination. Stick around, I got more videos coming up.